Okay, how's that? Porcelain, thank you. Yes, so Glitter's here, and I know. Wendy, Just Joy, been there, done that, my son. David Nelson, I'm not muted anymore. I should be, right? Are we good? Can you hear me? Let's see. I'm not a boomer, I'm an Xer, by the way. Young, Tia. Oh, Tia's here. Good to see you, Tia. So, how are we all doing today? Expert, yes. So I have my Miami Vice jacket. Dudley, good to see you, and Trish, everybody, Catherine, Heather, hello. So just wanted to say hello to everybody. It's a Friday night. I guess that makes it all right. um, I guess everybody's over there in Houston, so we have to make do with what we got. And you're stuck with me tonight just because I'm not in Houston. There's a few of us that didn't go. Just got too much going on, and I will say that how do you like? I've got my posters rearranged a little bit. I think it's a little better arrangement. This one here was reflecting too much on my last stream. So we're going to talk about appeals, and as is my, what would it be, predilection. I'll put all the stuff like the meat, the business stuff up front, and then we'll talk and just have fun until we exit and until we get bored. But so we'll talk about the subject matter right up front, and it's really very timely. I set this up. What is it? Last night last night, and today there is evolving news on the appellate front, and you will hear about that in the middle of this little session. So let's get going, because the reason I wanted to do this session is because a lot of people were watching my oral arguments that I posted, okay? Or I had a lot of, people were watching them, and there were some comments like, what are we watching here? What are we watching here? And what is this? And it's like, this is very different from a trial, right? And that's true. It is very different from a trial, but I do appeals. I also do trials, but I'm really pretty much assigned to the appellate division, and happily so. I've done so many trials that, if I didn't have another trial in my career, I'll be happy. I'll put it that way. They're really neat and they're fun, and then you get good at them and you really enjoy it, and then you fight the battles and win some, lose some, and just do your thing, and then it just becomes work. So, but trials can be fun. There's stresses associated with it that I don't find. I'm much more comfortable in appeals for my personality. So let's talk about what an appeal is and what it isn't, and what you're seeing when you watch an oral argument, because that'll give you some context. Okay, when an oral argument comes through, you're seeing kind of the end of the process. Muted again. Am I muted again? I don't think so. Am I muted, or is that just somebody trolling? Yeah, and we'll talk about future Mr. Expert. Hang out, and I'm redirecting to your stream, by the way. So if people hang out and we get to whatever, this will go till 9 at least, and at some point. So you can hear me, right? Not muted. Okay, somebody who said they're muted. Iman Razu, come on, I'm not muted. All right. So what is an appeal? Well, it's not a trial. It's not a redo. It's not a do-over. It is instead a review by the attorneys and the judge and the appellate. It's a review of the law that was applied below and the procedures to make sure that the trial was conducted fairly and in accordance with the law. All right, that's kind of what it is. Now, there's a lot of exceptions to that, but I call my job is an inch wide and a mile deep, whereas trial is like a mile wide and maybe an inch deep, but it's not quite so. But I'm very narrowly focused on very specific things, and I have to know them inside and out. That's kind of what an appeal is. Little Rock, good to see you. I think Little Rock, I think I know. Do I know you, Little Rock? I think you're Little Rock, and I think we've talked before, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, I do criminal appeals, so I'm going to confine this to criminal stuff. Somebody gets convicted of a major felony. They get life in prison without the possibility of parole. The last thing the judge says, he says, I'm going to sentence you to life in prison without possibility of parole. The last thing they say to that defendant is, you have the right to an appeal, and if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed for you. Okay. Well, what is every person who's sentenced to life going to say? I want to appeal, right? Now, there's also this idea of, I don't know why this mythology exists that appeals are some kind of magic formula for getting out of things. I don't know where these defendants get it, but there's this common mythology amongst our clients that say, oh, Just Joyce has gifted 10 memberships. Thank you, Little Rock. I don't really know what this means. I mean, what does that do? I have a memberships thing set up, and it's really just for people that want to support me. And thank you very much, Little Rock. That's very kind. Yes. Viva says less than 20. Wow, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Little Rock. Oh, and we got some rumblers. Let's talk to the rumblers. Dark Fox and CF Herman and the Uncovered Lamp. Cool. Yeah, so I don't know where this mythology comes from, because clients, they'll like, well, I'm just going to appeal it. Like, that's the answer. They think that, and I think that even the general public, they think, oh, all these people are getting out on appeal. Appeals are just letting the criminals out on the street. Appeals, there's some loophole or technicality, and the criminal finds it, and the clever appellate lawyer, gets his screwdriver out, and they unscrew the right bolt, and all of a sudden the guy's out. Oh my God, the murderer's let out. I don't know where that comes from. I mean, it's odd, because the reality is so far different from that. It is so directly converse and opposite to that, at least in Florida, and I can speak, I'm a Florida attorney, that it is exactly oppositely true. All right. So, for example, and I'm not promoting the book. In fact, you can get this article online at the SSRN page. All right. So it's available for free. But I did a study that says in page 251, and just read this real quick. Look, appellate chance of success is at best 6 in 1,000. 6 in 1,000 at best. And we're going to talk about what I mean by a win in a little bit. But 6 in 1,000, we win. All right. So, when I talk about what a win is, you'll say that's not a win. All right. Most people think a win means they get out on a technicality, right? They walk out of prison. Of the year that I did that article, and I did the analysis of all the cases every criminal case that our district did in that entire year, and I think there were 1,700 plus that year criminal appeals. Of that, there was one that went from guilty to not guilty. One out of 1,700. Now, in a trial situation, your chances are way better at a trial. Now, some better than others. And by the way, we're celebrating tonight. And I don't know if Let's Go Brandon's here, but it doesn't matter. We're celebrating. We have Sidecar in hand. I'll tell you what I'm celebrating in a little minute if you stick with me. And I get paid regardless. So, expert, we win when we get paid. I get paid. I'm a public defender. I fight my battles that I choose to fight. I fight for what I believe in. And that's the great thing, actually, that I love about my job, is half of my appeal. So when the guy gets life in prison, says, I want to appeal, if the trial was clean, I'll file what's called an Anders brief. And that's not just life, anybody who files an appeal. And I'll file an Anders brief. And Anders brief says that I don't see any problems with this trial. I can't in good faith argue something that I don't believe in. I don't believe that there's any error here. And so I move to withdraw. I summarize the facts of the case and I move to withdraw. And that, as a public defender, that is 50% of my cases. 50% of my cases, I read the case front to back and I file what's called an Anders brief and saying, I don't see anything. Yes, in Little Rock. See, Little Rock, you're going to be a public defender in Florida. I'm going to lure you in. He says, I know an Anders brief, but they are harder than just to argue something. You are so correct. And I don't even know why you know that, because most lawyers don't know that. That is impressive that you know that. So I salute Little Rock he's a lawyer in Little Rock and not a criminal lawyer. So the fact that he knows that is awesome. So, but let's talk about what an appeal is. And this is the process. I want to give you the process so that you understand when you are at the end of the process and watching the oral arguments, what has come before that. Okay. So when you're watching this oral argument, that's the entertaining thing for you, the consumer who's watching these videos, these formats, and that's what people want to see, right? But here's the way it happens. Somebody says, okay, I want to file appeal. That starts the whole thing. Okay, so Little Rock was a criminal defense lawyer for 5 years. Yeah, so you know. Anders briefs are really only available for assistant public defenders, though. Good night, Miss Dark Fox. All right, so what happens? Somebody files an appeal, then that starts the whole process going. The first thing that happens, and this is assuming indigency, which is my clients are indigent, right? Now they don't have any money. So the first thing that happens is the entire record is transcribed into writing. The docket is transcribed. All of the motions are transcribed. All of the motion hearings are transcribed. If there's a trial, the trial is transcribed. The sentencing hearing is transcribed. And so you read that, it's like, okay, the court, blah, 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 this witness, and here's what they say, right? So I get basically, usually it's in two piles, although it's all computerized now, 2 piles. And the first pile is the record, which is the docket and the sentencing and all of the hearings and all of the motions and all the police reports and all the evidence and everything that goes in the clerk's office, right? And then I have a T, that's an R, and that's for record. And then I have a T file, which is usually just the trial. That's the jury selection, the opening statements, all the witnesses and their testimony, cross-examination, anything goes on the trial, and the closing arguments and the verdict. So that's what I call the trial, the T. So you've got the R and the T. Now, when I first get it, I'll get these 2 piles of things. A typical case is usually 800 to 1,000 pages. And I'll read it front to back. And I read it for completion's sake. All right, so I'm going to read this big pile of stuff to make sure I have everything. For example, let's assume there's a motion to suppress and it gets denied by the court. Well, the motion hearing was not transcribed. Well, I need to hear what was said in that hearing. Or let's assume that somebody asks for a lawyer and they're denied, or they want to fire their lawyer. Like what's the suitcase trial? Suitcase trial, she's firing her lawyer, and there's a hearing, and I see on the hearing that the judge is putting in his notes, because I've got all the clerk's files and his notes are in there, and it'll say client wants to fire his lawyer and I denied that. Well, I need to get that hearing. I need to know what the client said so that I can read it to make sure that it was done properly in accordance with the law. All right. Competency is another one. Sometimes there's a suggestion of incompetency. I'm going to another drink. I'm celebrating, and we're going to find out why we're celebrating. So stay tuned. All right. We all here celebrate. It's Friday night. That's enough to celebrate, right? So we've got this process. So you got to complete the record. That's the first job. That's my first job. I look through it, make sure. If it's not complete, I do what's called a supplemental. So I'll say, I need this, I need this, I need this. Some attorneys play time games with that. I don't. I'll just look for everything I need, file it all in one big motion, and get it all in when it comes in. All right. The state pays for the transcript, so it's a state paid for thing. You're entitled to a appeal as a matter of right. Lord of the Ree, $5. See, Lord of the Ree, I love it. You're a good man, Lord of the Ree. You know that, and he's a fellow Paul Reed Smith buyer. So good for you. $5. Gosney looking sharp. I thought, I'm trying to class it up here with the jacket and the suit, because we're talking law, so we've got to look at it. Yeah, I don't know where everybody is, but we'll talk. All right. So, but it's just you and me. We're talking, and you're gonna learn more about appeals in this little session than you ever thought you needed to know. So I complete the record. Now, at some point, if there are some things, I'm not wearing pajama pants. There's some things that I need to preserve for appeal. Like sometimes there's little ticky tacky things or things that can be corrected by the trial court. All right. For example, a sentencing error. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's big, sometimes it's little, but like little stuff would be they're entitled to $100 cost of prosecution and they actually gave them $150. Okay. That is $50 too much. They're not entitled to that. So I send a motion back to the trial court and say, fix this error. And then they have 60 days to rule on that error. If they rule on it, then they fix it, then there's no issue. If they don't fix it, then I can put that as a point I argue. All right. Sometimes it's major, like it's a third degree felony, punishable by up to 5 years, and they actually get 10 years, say. So judge sentences them to 10 years. Well, that is excessive. That is beyond the jurisdiction of the court. So generally, I'll send that back to the trial court to correct. And if they don't correct it, I will definitely merit that. All right. So then I've reviewed the whole thing. As I'm reviewing it and understanding what's in this record and what the issues are, and as I'm going through and I'm reading it, I'm spotting issues. So I'm like, okay, here's an issue, here's an issue, here's an issue. And as I'm writing and summarizing the transcript and summarizing the testimony, the record, I'm issue spotting, saying, here's an issue, here's an issue. Sometimes it's, I don't know, I have a question here. And sometimes I have like, okay, this is definitely an issue. Sometimes I know it's an issue. Sometimes it's like, I'm not sure and I got to go research it. But as I'm summarizing this statement of case and facts in the first part of the brief, I'm reading through this and I'm creating this document. And then I've got a checklist of items that I need to go back and look at. Sometimes I've got something I think is good and sometimes it's really good. And then I do the research there and it's not so good. Sometimes it goes the other way. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, this is kind of weak. And then as I argue it and it gets better. Okay, so let's see. So get that? Now, Arkansas attorney just jumps over. He's cool. He's jumping back and forth. I see you. Right? So now I've got a list of issues and I will assess whether there's something good there that I can argue, meritorious. If there is nothing meritorious, I file an Anders brief. And that's just a summary of the case and law, and I withdraw. If it's not so good, if I've got a good issue or maybe issues, then I will file what's called a merit brief. Now, a merit brief, it's interesting. There's a way to create this. The way I work it, and this is kind of a little insider, but I'm doing this for Arkansas attorney because he'll retire and come to my office and have fun. Oh, look at this, Arkansas, $50. Okay, so this is for you, Arkansas criminal attorney, $50 Rumble rant, 100% on Rumble goes to me, and I really thank you. So this is for you, just in case you want to come and play in Funland, and I can show you some stuff. We need to sit down and talk because I haven't fully convinced you that it's worth it. But let me just say, this one I'm going to tell you because you have done this before. And I'd like your opinion on it because I'll watch it for your chat. All right. Thank you very much for the Rumble rant. And that is when I've decided, what I do is every brief, every one that I start, I begin as an Anders brief. Now, why do I do that? The reason for that is because the Anders is a case out of California that said, what is it about if you don't have anything to argue, but you represent your client, you see you're in a conflict because I have a duty of honor and obligation to truth in the court, right? And so I can't mislead the court, but I also can't argue against my client. So I'm sort of in an ethical quandary. So Anders is the one that answers that, all right? But I start all briefs as if they are Anders briefs, as if they're Anders briefs. And the reason for that is because it forces me to master the record top to back, front to back. I have to read everything because I'm creating a summary of all the motions of the arrest, the motions, the hearings, the competency evaluations, the B2 motions, the sentencing order, the trial, all the witness. I summarize all the witnesses. I summarize any issues. And I basically create a whole narrative of what went on. It's like writing a little personal book to summarize what happened in this case below. And I do that in every case that I do. See now, and so it forces me, and part of Anders is I have to master the record. And by forcing myself to do a complete summary of the case front to back, I will, by doing that, have mastered the record. All right, you see how that works? Now, what happens, let's assume I've identified a couple meritorious points. Then what I do is I save as, you know, this on the Word document, you save as, and I save it as merit brief. And then let's say the issue is illegal sentencing. He got 10 years and he's only entitled, he should only get 5, right? It was a jurisdictional problem in the fifth, the lower court didn't correct it. Then what I do is you can strip out everything that's not relevant to your merit point. So I'll just say he was arrested for a third-degree felony. He went to trial and lost. Verdict came back. I sent a B2 down, and they gave him 10 years in prison, but it's only 5 years. Now, see, I skipped the entire trial. It might have been a 20-day jury trial, but I chopped all of that out because it's not relevant to the sentencing. The only thing that matters in that brief is the sentencing. So as a matter of efficiency and appellate practice, you delete everything from the facts that aren't relevant to your merit point. So it's the merit brief is going to be a subset of the complete summary. Does that make sense? Now, if I have multiple issues, I might need to add a lot more, but sometimes I'll put a little qualifier in there that says, you know, some stuff's been deleted for purposes. Okay. So do you get it? Like, why would I talk about this guy stabbed him 20 times and there was a witness that saw him running for the hills and then he saw this guy and he told this and this is a statement. All that stuff doesn't matter when the only issue is maybe the sentencing. So you delete all that out. So, and then what happens sometimes is I'll find a merit point and I think it's really good. And as I write it, it turns really bad. And there's a case really against me and assume I don't want to fight that battle, that uphill battle. So then it turns into an Anders brief. Well, I have my Anders brief already set. So then I just summarize my work and I stick it over there and then it's done. So I go back. So I preserve my issue. So I always start as an Anders brief. And then this is very interesting for me, but this is what I teach. I train all of our appellate attorneys in our office. And this is kind of part of what I teach. And what I'm telling you is no different from what I tell our appellate attorneys. Okay, so let me see here. Xander Zan says, no hot tub stream with Nick Rackets. At the end, we'll talk about the, remind me, Xander's, we'll talk about our dinner with Nick. We'll talk about that because that was pretty fun and people have been asking me about it. So, and we're going to talk too about my live streaming coming up and the status of the death case and just all kinds of stuff. So we're in it for some stuff here tonight. But I want to tell you about what you're seeing in this oral argument. So now I've taken this file, I've reviewed everything, I've summarized it, I've mastered the record, I've identified merit issues, I've argued the ones that I want. Then I put together a merit brief, assuming it's a merit brief. And if you're not going to orally argue an Anders brief, you're moving to a draw. So I've got a merit brief. At that point, I hit send. Now I will say that because you lose so much, I get my satisfaction from filing the best brief that I can possibly do. When I file a brief, when I file a case, I want to feel like I've done everything I can do for my client. I have raised the point and I've argued it to the best of my ability. So when I hit send, my satisfaction, it does not come from winning. My satisfaction comes from making sure that my client is represented to the best of my ability. It sounds odd, but you have to, because if you get wrapped up into winning and losing in appeals, you know, 6 out of 1,000, only 6 out of 0.6% do you get a winner as defined by us appellate attorneys? Now, we're going to talk about that in a second too. But so the merit point goes off and gets filed. Then the Attorney General's office, they file an answer brief. When I first started, I used to get a little more wrapped up in their answer briefs. I don't care about them so much. I read them, but really, I'm not arguing with the state Attorney General's office. I'm arguing with these judges. And it's hard to explain this, especially to a civil practitioner, because civil practitioners, the other side doesn't argue, you win by default, right? There's no defaulting. If the state does, they could file nothing, and they do sometimes, and you still lose because you're fighting with these judges who think that all of these criminals are getting out on technicalities, and that's how they're in there, right? Yeah, we'll talk about Burns Steakhouse in a little bit too. How often do appeals from judges who have been disbarred work? Never seen it happen. Isn't that sad? So so the state then files their answer. Then I can do what they call a reply brief. Okay, reply brief. And a reply brief is, I only do that maybe 20 or 30% of the time. And I have rules for when I do them. If they misrepresent the facts or the law, I definitely do it. If they leave something out, or if they I can't really raise new issues, but this is kind of the way it is. So it's all in writing. I never even really talked to the AG's office, the Attorney General's office. It's just goes off and flies, right? So I file my brief. I'm in my office. I've done it. And then once I file it, I forget about it and I move on. And then the answer comes in eventually. I review it to see if there's anything in there that jumps out at me like I didn't cover, or something that seems wrong, and I double check it. And then I'll file a reply brief in the case. And then when I file the reply brief, at that point, I can ask for oral argument. All right. Now, I don't ask for, I have 500 plus appeals I've done, direct appeals. I don't even know right now. Whatever it is, it's a big number. I don't ask for oral argument, but in a very small percentage of those. And I have rules for when I ask for oral argument. For example, if the state AG misrepresents law or fact, I will request oral argument because I want them to be subjected to the punishment from the judges that I've called out in my reply brief, that like, look, they're not playing fair, because the honesty level is very high in our practice. There's respect when you represent that this case says this, then you better make sure that's what it actually says. Look at Arkansas criminal. You're rocking it in the Rumble chant. Good, thank you. I'm reading what you're saying, so we'll talk. So if they misrepresent the facts or law, definitely oral argue. Sometimes oral argument will force the justices to watch a video or pay attention to some evidence that you really want them to look under. If it's an esoteric legal question, they can do it. But sometimes, and if you look in one of my oral arguments I did, I think it was the Farley case, Anne Marie Farley. It was an old case I had, and I put the oral argument up. And that one, there was a video surveillance, and the entire guilt was based on video surveillance. And I wanted those judges to watch that video because the video did not show that my client did anything. She was just present. She didn't do anything. It didn't show. And the whole case was based on that video. And so I requested oral argument to force those judges to watch that video. And then I remember the day of the thing, I came out, and they came from behind little curtains, in their little robes and stuff. And they're like, we were all just watching that. We couldn't see it. So I'm saying, you didn't watch it until I requested oral argument, the day of oral argument. That tells me that if there's a piece of evidence like that I really must have them watch, it's good to request oral argument. Now, they don't even have to. I would say, before these last two cases I had 6 in a row where I asked for argument and they denied me. So just because I asked doesn't mean I'm entitled to it. Now, what is oral argument? So now we get there. Well, really, everything that I want to say is in the brief. Okay, it's all in writing. So it's more of an opportunity to lose than it is to win, because what they do is there's 3 judges on that panel, and they interrogate you on the law and the facts of the case. And it's kind of a game. They play this game like it's a joke. It's like a hazing ritual for the lawyer more than anything. How much we change minds, I don't think we change minds at oral argument. And that's just my honest opinion. The attorney, some people like it. The clients like it. They feel like you're doing the best for me. But the problem is that you could lose an oral argument very easily. For example, you think the issue is here, and you've argued that in your brief, and that's where the argument turns, right? Well, the judges are back there behind the curtain, and they're debating some other point that you're not aware of. So there's one that's against you, one that's for you, and there's a middle person, and they're arguing between them. Well, the enemy judge who's against you says something like, and you don't know where they're coming from, but they know what the issues they're arguing about is, right? And so they'll ask a question something like this. They'll say, Mr. Gosney, you would admit that, and then they'll put this little tag on. You'd admit, through this. And then you say, well, yes, Your Honor, I don't think that's really relevant, but yes, that happened. Boom, you just lost your case. Because the swing judge, that was their issue, and they know enough, and they targeted you, and you just admitted you just sold your client out. So you don't know what you're dealing with. You can really lose it very easily. Cheers. So basically my rule is I have to have a reason to ask for oral argument. I have a reason. There's behind every oral argument, I know why I'm asking for that. Okay. So that just giving you that little tip. This is insider appellate attorney work, right? So, all right. So that's what you're watching. It's a 30-minute interrogation. It's basically a hazing ritual for the lawyers, and it's a way for the judges to look really smart. And they've got a hot bench. They're a hot bench, and they're like shooting the questions asking, can you deal with it? And if you saw that in the one case that was the Florida Supreme Court case on speedy trial, I'm sitting there trying to, I couldn't even finish one answer, and they're interrupting me. It's like constant. And as soon as the judge starts talking, you have to discipline yourself to stop talking. So the question, okay, Your Honor, yes. Well, if you look at my brief on page, and then they're shooting another question, some other judge. You got a panel of 7 at the Supreme Court. Is it 7 or 9? I don't know, a whole bunch of them up there. I don't even pay attention to who's who on there. I just answer the questions, right? I'm focused on my work. And to me, I just assume that they're going to hammer me and I'm going to respond. All right. Now, in a death penalty case, it's mandatory. There's no Anders briefs in a death penalty case. And it is mandatory Supreme Court written review and mandatory oral argument. And it's a double the time. So we usually get 15 minutes at the appellate level. At the Supreme Court death case, you get 30 minutes. So they can pound you for 30 minutes. I mean, it's mandatory. So every death case is orally argued. So the one I've got now will be orally argued. I don't know if I'll do it or not. I might do it just for you guys. But we have other people. If I never had another oral argument before the Florida Supreme Court, I don't really care. It doesn't. Over time, you lose any of the glamour or the mystery of the people in the black robes and the big hall and the important thing. You kind of lose the shine. It loses its shine, and it's not that interesting to me. I mean, I want them to do the right thing. That's what I'm concerned. That's what I'm focused on. And me being at the, oh, look at me, I'm so great, I'm arguing for the Florida Supreme Court. It doesn't really have any luster. I hate to say it that way, but it's a job. And actually it's a pain because I got to drive up to Tallahassee and back and get a hotel room. It sucks. All right. So, let's see. So we've got that oral argument. Okay. Once you finish the oral argument, then you go back to work and go work on some other case. And then sometime in the future, they'll issue an opinion. Now, there's something called the PCA, per curiam affirmed, and Florida courts have PCA litis. What I mean by that is they will rubber stamp affirmances just by the boatload. And I'm talking about most cases are rubber stamped, affirmed without an opinion. In Florida, in the year that I did in Ideas and Answers in Law, that article, 95% of all defendants got an affirmance without even a written opinion. And that is the end of the road. The only way they can go from there is the U.S. Supreme Court, which I've done 5 times. But I've never been accepted in the U.S. Supreme Court. But I've been so upset with getting the PCA on a very important meritorious issue that I have taken it to the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of my client. I don't have to do that, but I feel it's my obligation to exhaust those. And it has to be right. It has to be an issue that I care about, that's really ripe for appellate review at the federal level, which is a very small subset of my cases. So usually PCA is the end of the road. Now, of the remaining 5%, 2% are written reversals for the state. So that means the state has appealed something, your guy got a good beneficial ruling, and they reverse in that 2% against you. So that's a big loss, right? So then you have 3% remaining. Of the remaining 3% where they write and it's somehow favorable to your client, where we get to the 0.6% is only at most 0.6% has any meaning at all to our clients. Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, if I've got 5 life sentences and you do away with 1 life sentence, you still have 4 life sentences. That is a meaningless result for our client. Now, to the appellate office, a written opinion that reverses a life sentence is a win. See here, sidecar, Ghazni, I'm just telling you, you're getting a preview. You're just hold on, we're going to get to it. To the client, it's meaningless. So that's why I wanted to analyze the actual results from the cases to say how many of these at most actually have meaning for our clients, because a client wants some remedy that actually gives them something. You know, reversing 1 out of 5 life sentences gets our clients nothing. To the appellate attorney, to our office, that is considered a win, where they write and they reverse and you win. Yay, I win. Okay, meaningless. Same thing if a guy's got a life sentence and you get $1,000 costs of prosecution knocked down to $100. I won. But the guy's still in prison for life, so he doesn't have to pay the $1,000. He's not going to pay it anyway. Right. See, this is upon the horizon. Now you're understanding where the sidecars, the alcohol comes in. Although I have a life outside of this, I have a philosophy, but this is a celebratory sidecar. So we're going to talk. We're talking, right? Okay. So 0.6 is the maximum. That's either ones that I know that the client's got a real remedy, something of meaning, or it was unknown. Okay. 0.6%, 6 out of 1,000. Now, that has to be qualified too, because you could get something like, okay, he got life in prison and they messed up the sentencing. So you win and you get a new sentencing hearing. That's a big win, because that's real substantive win for the client. They actually get another bite at the apple where they get a new sentencing hearing. All right. Now, the problem is they get a new sentencing hearing, they could get life again. You see, so what if you get a new trial? Oh, yay, I won. I got a new trial. Sorry about the tea being burped here. Hold on. Okay. So, where was I with that? So you could get a new trial, and that would be a big win, reversed for a new trial. The state then retries you, and you lose again, and you get the same sentence or more. Okay, so you understand how minuscule your chances of any kind of relief on appeal are. Now, I had one of my office mates was in my office. We have a team of 20 attorneys in our appellate office. There's 6 districts in Florida. We cover like 13 counties. We have 20 attorneys that cover 13 counties in Florida. And one of my associates came in and was complaining, which we love to do, is complain about the 5th DCA or the 5th PCA. They're addicted to affirmances by PCA. And complaining like, we haven't had a winning opinion since your Kelly case, now, if you saw the Kelly case, that was one of the oral arguments I posted. That was the one with a guy walking his 4-year-old kid down the middle of the road. He was drunk as a skunk. And it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It was a 25-mile-per-hour side street. And the cop came up and honked his horn. He didn't hear him, honked it a second time. The guy looked around, saw him, and took his kid off the thing. And they charged him with child neglect. Okay. And that was a win. That went from guilty to not guilty. I don't know if you watched that oral argument, but if you look back, that's the Kelly case. And Mr. Kelly actually allows me to talk about that. He has waived attorney-client privilege on that case. So I can share that. I can talk about it. I can give you everything. And in fact, I shared that brief in my locals chat if you want to read the Kelly brief. And that was a winner. And that was the last winner we had in our office, which was probably 8 to 10 months ago. Out of 20 attorneys filing stuff for months, that was the last real clean win that we had. All right. Guess who got another win today? Second win for the year. Yours truly, sidecar time. And I will tell you about what the win was. I do not have my client's permission to talk about the details of the case generally. I can talk, or specifically, I can tell you a little bit about generally. But it was a win today. Friday's his day. Came out with a written opinion, giving the guy a new sentencing hearing. Cheers to me. Okay. So I'll tell you what I can tell you about it. First of all, it's the case, if you watch, it's the most recent oral argument I did up in Fernandina Beach. And it was involving the kid who was wearing the Halloween costume and was a half hour late to work. And then they also got the $400,000 cost of incarceration, right? And this is also in Ideas and Answers in Law. So now this is what, if you read the case, or if you read the book, Arguments Against Charging Inmates for Their Incarceration, right? That article is the case that is basically, that article was written as part of my backgrounder to challenge the cost of incarceration in this case. So this is the very case that I'm talking about in Ideas and Answers in Law. So if you read that chapter, it's on page, on this version, it is on page 171. Now, here's another, and I can tell you a little bit. One of the things is there was the cost of incarceration issue, which is Gosney's pet project, obviously. $400,000 cost of incarceration for 22 years in prison, $50 a day, right? So that one I did not win on. The one I won on was the one that helps the client, and that is the one where he was wearing the Halloween costume. Now, if I'm going to show you, Steph, the Altar Nerd's on. Hey, Steph. Congratulations, Steph, on everything that you are. How's that? Let me show you, if you want to look up this, yes, if you register for the Arkansas attorney, you register for the bar exam in Florida, will you take it for me, Gosney? Oh, I'd love to. What I can do is I can hang out with you by the pool and give you study tips. You can come by my office and I'll give you your own personal bar exam prep. How's that? Let me see if I can bring something up for you. Okay, if you want to read this opinion, oops, that's not it. Share screen. Okay. If you go here, can you see that? So this is where the 5th District Court of Appeal, this is my court, and it says opinions. It says recent opinions, most recent written opinions, August 11th. What's today? August 11th. Click there. Seth Connor Wells versus State of Florida. Written. Well, how much can I go with this? Let's take a look. So there's my case. It's me. So this is a written reversal. And it gives you the whole background here. And we can skip through this because that gives you the background. Constitutional argument. Here's where they say that excessive fines, I will say this. Let's see. Can I hold my tongue or should I let it blast? or as he says, well, this is the kind of stuff that they like to throw at you as a public defender. Oh, listen to this. As to Wells's argument that the cost of incarceration violates the excessive fines clause of the Eighth Amendment, we find the argument wholly without merit. Okay? I want you to read my article and see if you would agree that my argument was wholly without merit. All right, we might hear more about this in coming months. Let's just leave it at that. All right, but I do win. Here's the thing about the Santa Claus costume, and basically they reversed because he had two violations. Okay, so he had two violations. One was for being a half hour late at work, and the other was for wearing a Halloween costume, which he can't as a sex offender. All right. So they said, well, the late curfew is enough to get 22 years in prison for that violation for being a half hour late. Working late by a half hour was enough to get him 22 years in prison. All right, just leave it at that. And then he said, but the Halloween costume thing, I win on that. And so it gets sent back to the trial court for resentencing based on the singular violation of probation for being late to work. So for that, he'll get, well, we'll see. I don't know. So that is, so that's a big win because I got a remand to the state trial court for resentencing. Big win. Gosney gets a sidecar. I only drink to celebrate or for happy times. Never drink for depressing times because this is a depressant, actually. So, yes, Arkansas, I understand. It is public, but I have so many thoughts and so much stuff that's going on in my head that I cannot share about strategy and what I'm going to be doing. And there's a lot to it that I have to be very careful about what I say because the original sentence was 22 years in prison. Oh, the original sentence. Well, he got some prison and then some tail-end probation. So it was like, I forget exactly, a few years in prison followed by a few years of probation. All right. So big win for Gosney, 2 in a row. The last 2 wins in this year have been Gosney at a 20 attorney. So yay for me. I got to celebrate that, don't you think? So cheers to me. It's very doesn't happen. And actually, I got to say, I enjoy the game. I enjoy the writing process. I'm happy that they bought into one of my arguments. I'm happy that they wrote. And actually, just writing is a victory because when they have a 95% PCA rate, yeah, bonus. I'm not getting any bonuses. I get no bonuses for this. This is just, I'm expected. I'm a government employee. I do my job. No bonuses, but I appreciate the thought. So, do we understand what an oral argument is? Do we understand what an oral argument is? And what an appeal is? So, an appeal is checking the law. So, in the case of this, the facts it's kind of a complex essay. The way they came at it wasn't exactly the way I came at it. And you don't really, when you're arguing these things, you don't really know how the judges think or what they're thinking. There's no communication back and forth. So you're just doing your best to frame out the issue and explain to them in a clear-eyed way what the issues are. Okay, so we got that? All right, so we're doing good. No, Arkansas, does the state take your money from the sale of your books? No, this is my side grift. You see, this is the thing. All of these books, I do it because I'm enjoying writing them. I do it because I want you to read them. And I make the money, and that makes my wife happy. It's not a lot of money. It's a little pittance. It's a little side job. It's not law related. I can't be hired outside. So we got that. Okay, so what is an appeal? Now, let me also talk about what it is. You can't argue really like facts because what will happen a lot of times is your clients will say, that person was lying on the stand. I was there and that person lied. Okay, that is not something you can generally take up on appeal. And you always have to qualify these things. There are always exceptions on certain cases and certain fact situations, but generally that is not cognizable on direct appeal. it's only a matter of law. So the judge makes a ruling. If you remember I was given the Shabusiness defense lawyer a little bit of positivity because he would say something, he'd object, and then the judge would kind of, a couple times the judge kind of, okay, move on, counselor. And then the defense lawyer would say, have you ruled? He would force the judge to rule, because if the judge does not rule, you don't have an appellate point because there's no decision by the court in which the law was implemented. So court must rule for you to challenge generally. Okay, so let's see. What else do we want to talk about? Thank you, FinPat. Books are great. Keep them coming. Because of somebody like FinPat, who's a big supporter, one of my best supporters, and I really appreciate it. They will keep coming. The Summer Friend is coming out. It's going to be here tomorrow in the box. So we're going to be packing them up and shipping them out probably Monday. So Summer Friend is coming out. I'm going to share with you some Brucey updates. Brucey's coming along great. That will definitely, all things God willing, Brucey will be out by Thanksgiving. I've been working hard on my fantasy novel and my second death penalty book. All are sort of in the pipeline, but I'm working, I'm having fun. So anybody has any questions about appeals, I'll be happy to answer them. But that gives you kind of a flavor of what an appeal is. All right. Now let's move into fun times. So cheers to you guys. And because of people like FinPat and everybody who's buying the books, that's the reason I can keep writing them. Because believe me, if I get a flopper, the wife will say, no more books for you, Gosney. I might write them. I won't be able to sell them to you. No, congratulate Arkansas crime attorney. All over to chat over in Rumble. Enjoyed the death penalty book. Happy wife, happy life. My wife and I celebrated 32 years on the 9th of August. Congratulations, 32 years. I'm going to be celebrating 25 years coming up. So, okay. Yeah, Rose, you're right. It's ridiculous, the severity of the sentences in Florida. That's why, when people talk about this soft on crime stuff, I'm like, not in my jurisdiction. Florida, we grind them up into little meat patties. It's not a pretty place. There's a balance here. There's a balance between vicious vindictiveness and soft on crime bleeding hearts, right? You have to look at cases individually and really, and sometimes mistakes will be made. And is it better that, a bunch of people let go and one of them commits another crime? Or is it better just to lock everybody up and, you make one mistake and you're gone? I tend to be a little more forgiving, and my job, it requires that attitude. There's some cases in which, they deserve to be segregated from society. But the problem is that people come in with this pre-positioning baggage that, that these people that we represent are just scum and we just need to lock them all up and our problems will be solved if we just lock them all up. Well, first of all, you're talking about a large percentage of people. Second is my dealings with most of the criminal element is that there's a lot of redeeming qualities. Most of them have drug problems, mental illness problems, societal, they're low IQs, and other issues that are non-criminal. And it depends on the severity and what they're actually doing that require. And so each case needs to be looked at very individually. And that's why we have a judge and we have these adversarial systems so that we can judge things individually. But if somebody comes in and says, I'm the hanging judge and everybody that comes to me gets sentenced to the max, there's no discretion being made and there's no humanity. It's a human business. Carol, just finished your death penalty book, educational. What do you think of the governor commuting death penalty with no parole? Louisiana governor commuting death penalty means to life no parole. I'm for that because I'm very against the death penalty. If you read my death penalty book, you would see that. I think that's what they should do. But oh my God, a lot to talk about. So let's go back and let's talk about and also it's Arkansas criminal attorney. What is the parole time in Florida? There's no parole in Florida. And we have something called an honesty in sentencing. If somebody gets sentenced to a 10-year sentence, they must serve 80% of that sentence. So if you get a 10-year sentence, the best you can do is 8 years. So 20-year sentence, that means 16 years. That's a lot of time. And there's a callousness that comes from working in the system that it's like these people become files. It's a life in being. And people they just throw them away. Oh, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, boom, boom, boom. You're talking about the majority, a huge part of people's lives, hacking that out of their life. It's a horrific thing. And, if we're going to do that to somebody, the crime better damn well fit the punishment. That's my opinion. But sadly, it just gets to be this throwaway society, and they become dehumanized. If we dress them up in an orange jumpsuit, and they're a criminal, and they're a file, and they're just as good as the record. When people have redeeming qualities, and they may not be violent crimes. Like the one I always use as an example is that I had on appeal a woman who got 19 years in prison for stealing a can of spray paint. And I just say that's ridiculous. But it was a bad decision on the part of the prosecutor, as far as I'm concerned, because they had done a bunch of bad things when they were 18, did 10 years in prison in Oklahoma, and so had a very bad record. And then was like 48-year-old woman who was in Walmart and stole this can of spray paint, and her prior record just came and clobbered her on what I call our score sheet. So that, to me, as somebody stealing a can of spray paint at Walmart is not a threat to me. And to me, as a conservative kind of guy, I don't want to pay for her incarceration for 19 years. This is just from a selfish point of view. But she's also not a criminal that needs to be locked up for 19 years. It's ridiculous. So no parole in Florida, 80% of the sentence, truth in sentencing. Okay, let's talk about some more stuff. So death penalty case. And so let's talk about death penalty. Death penalty, no Anders briefs. Mandatory oral argument. Double time. Florida Supreme Court. And death penalty it's in flux in Florida. And things get very complex. This death penalty case is a 7,000 page record, I think. So it's 7,000 pages. But also when I'm arguing, a lot of it is attacking the constitutionality of the statute itself. So it's not even case specific. It is very complex U.S. Supreme Court law and constitutional law as applied to procedure. And thus, my next book on death penalty, which may or may not be public, I don't know. I'll probably work on it because I'm writing this brief to go tell the Florida Supreme Court that they're all wrong, which is kind of what this job requires, right? I represent my client, and that Supreme Court has been appointed by DeSantis to be pro-death penalty. That is the number one requirement for them to be sitting up there. So they're all against me. So I'm really arguing through them to the U.S. Supreme Court. And when I do that, I'm going to have to stand on the firing line for 30 minutes and tell them why they're all wrong. Except for Labarga. Labarga's a good guy. Labarga's the best justice on the Florida Supreme Court, by the way, just for notes. Arkansas criminal lawyer, you don't need to get, but thank you very much. He's a good man. Rumble ranting me again. But what do you say? I have to get back to work, Steve. I will watch the rest later. I have a trial mediation, 2 depositions next week. Love the show. Glad to see you growing. Well, thank you. Isn't that Arkansas? Let's give a can to Arkansas criminal lawyer. I have to get trial mediation and 2 depositions next week. Oh, yes. So part of it is that I need to, when I write this stuff, some of the stuff's already been done. I have to make it my own, and I have to know it so that when I'm dealing with these justices and they're firing at me, trying to trick me and trying to make me look stupid, that I don't look stupid and that I can be respectful but disagreeable. It's a very fine balance, and I'm not repeating that one. Oh, right. Thank you. That's my bonus. Well, thank you. You made my night. Arkansas criminal lawyer, you made my night, and we're celebrating together. Thank you very much for all your kindness with your Rumble rants. And watch back. I'll finish up. Yes, a lot of attorneys do quit. And civil is a lot dirtier than criminal. Criminal can be pretty dirty, and I got a case right now that's dirty as you can believe. Prosecutorial nastiness. and we're working on it. It's, the actually innocent clients are the ones that are the hardest, because those are the ones that there's only one right answer, right? I mean, if you've got a guy that's on death row and you get him life, that's a victory. See, what we consider victory is a life in prison term, right? Which is nuts in a death case. So now I'm working on my brief. Once I get my brief done, and I think I've got 20 issues that I've outlined, they're probably going to get compressed. One of them, the main issue, is the general constitutionality of the Florida Supreme Court of the death penalty statute in Florida. And that is a 55-page merit point, just that one merit point. And it's filled with law and organization and complexity. Upon the horizon, good to see you, by the way, buddy. Florida's tough on spray paint. It's one thing for prosecutors to want to win. What a disappointment in the judge and his judgment. It's not on the judge, though, because we have minimum mandatories under what we call a score sheet. It's really prosecutorial indiscretion. They're just merciless, and they don't care. They just want the win and put a notch on their thing, and they don't care about these people. They got to win, right? Now, you can see the brief in the Kelly case. I did post on Locals the Kelly brief because I can provide that to you. Just Joy thanks Arkansas criminal lawyer, who's also Little Rock, for the gifted membership. So thank you. Okay, so death cases, I got a pretty good handle on it. I've got like 4 more merit points, but I've got drafts of all the other points. I've got the thing. It's like a big pile. And so I'm very good. Then I'm going to a death penalty conference. Oh, and I'm going to Colorado, by the way, next Friday. It's next Friday. Week from today, I will be in Denver, Colorado at go to my website and go to the events. I'll show you how to do that. Let me pull this up for you. Let's see here. Rumble. I'm not so expert yet, but okay. So can you see this? All right. So if you go there and go up here to events, you see the events tab. Click there. Denver, Colorado meet and greet Friday, August 18th. $0. Just show up, and it's at the Hilton Garden Inn in Denver Tech Center in Denver, Colorado. That's 8:00 at the bar. Denver, Colorado meet and greet. So just come by and talk. I always have fun with these. I meet people there, and it's a lot of fun. And Andrew Branco will be there with me. So if you want to meet me and Andrew, Steph, the Ultra Nerd new member, Steph, you're great. I edited her book. I always feel bad. I hope you didn't take it wrong, because I gave her some harsh edits there. But a lot of it's English language. We're separated by a common language. She's speaking all this Brittanyese, Yorkshireese. Actually, Gosneys are from Yorkshire. You know that, right? I wonder if Steph, do you know any Gosneys in Yorkshire? Because we got a lot of Gosneys in Yorkshire. And I don't know Ian Thornley. Now I'm checking the chats here. We're thinking about coming over to England. I want to go to Ireland, so I think I'm going to go to Ireland next year around this time for my anniversary. And thank you, Steph. She's so kind. Do not know any Yorkshire Gosneys. They're around. That's where I guess there's a lot of Gosneys here. So I may, if I'm in Ireland, I may hop across the little puddle there and go to Scotland and maybe London. I don't know. We'll see how much money I have at that point. If I sell enough books, then I'll definitely do that. But if I don't, then I'll just be stuck with Ireland alone. But you can come over to Ireland, right? What else we got? Okay, I'm going to dump you all over into expert when this gets done. But I did want to tell you, so I'm updating on the capital case. It's getting a handle on it. That's why I'm live streaming. First of all, we're celebrating an appellate win. 2 in a row for Gosney. The only 2 appellate wins we've had in the office, both for Gosney. Cheers to me. Got another drink on that one. Oh, FinPat, Arizona. I was in Arizona. There's good people in Arizona. My wife works for Embry-Riddle, and they have a branch campus at Prescott. So I was in Arizona. I love Arizona. That's a beautiful state. Oh, and I love Flagstaff. Prescott's beautiful. I love Tucson. Tucson is great. Pitt Peak Observatory. Bisbee, been to Bisbee. I love the copper mine there. It's gorgeous. I love Bisbee. Arizona's great. So what else are we going to talk about tonight? So we got that. Sidecar, thumbs up. Maybe I'll go hang out with the expert. Summer Friend going to be shipped. Working on the fantasy novel. The fantasy novel is really the joy. I love doing the fantasy novel. But see, this is a problem. I'm stepping on my other books. This book isn't even shipped yet, and I'm already thinking about the next one. So I just posted, I did a long stream with Jill from Ministries, and we talked all about my books. I'm going to be doing American law courses first week of September, where I'll be teaching criminal procedure. I already taught criminal law for Andrew Branca. So I'm going to do that. Let's see, what else? What else I had some other stuff you guys were asking me about, and now I'm going to forget. Darn it. The Basalt Stairway. Yeah, that's on the cover of Houses of the Holy for Led Zeppelin. That's the main reason I want to go see that. I hear you, FinPat. We'll talk. Okay, Colorado. Something I'm missing. We'll be Colorado next Friday at 8 o'clock with Andrew Branca at the meet and greet at the hotel. My son's going to be there. Andrew Branca will be there. Dinner with Nick. That's right. See there? Thank you very much, Jen. So people want to know about Dinner with Nick. Well, Nick was over in Tampa, and I'm getting too old for this kind of thing, but I was like, I love Bern's Steakhouse, Berns. Bern's Steakhouse is one of the top steakhouses in the world. It is a world-class steakhouse. Prices to match, but occasionally, and I will keep telling Gigi, I just talked about the appellate wins. The Kelly case and the Wells case were both wins, so you got to look back, you see. So I was telling Nick, I want to take you out to the steakhouse. And he's like, he's so flighty. He's like, oh, yeah, sure. He's like a contrarian. If you say it, he'll go the other way, right? But I'm like, when are you going to be? He was in St. Pete. I'm like, what are you doing? Well, let's go to dinner. And he's like, okay, well, I'm flying out on Thursday or whatever. I can only do it on Wednesday. I'm like, well, let's do Wednesday. So I looked up, and Bern's usually you have to book a month in advance, but they had 4 people at 9:30 at Bern's Steakhouse. So I went ahead and booked it, and I said, you're coming. So my wife and I drove over there and went to dinner with Lady Rackets and Mr. Nose. And we had really nice steak and a tour of the winery and the wine cellar, a tour of the kitchen, which is part of their deal. Top-notch steak. I had steak tartare. I had a Delmonico. He had a 100-day-old Delmonico, which was ridiculously expensive. And just the best. And then after you're done with dinner, you go upstairs, and there's a dessert level. So the second floor is all these private booths with desserts. And see, the thing is I know that Nick is controversial, and not everybody likes Nick. Okay, I've gotten some people bombing me in the chat. He's a different kind of guy, but he's got a beautiful wife, homeschools his children, lives in a rural area of Minnesota, which is beautiful. And I'm a rural kind of guy. I love that. Those are my people, God's country. And whatever the image that you see, he's just an average kind of guy, kind of nice guy to hang out with. And we had a beautiful time. And his wife is just charming and lovely. So we had a really nice time. So nothing exciting, no great stories. I don't know, but I did make him 2 hours late for his live stream. But it was worth it because that was the best steak. And the thing, it's one of those. And I wanted to have him go there because it's like, you got to experience Bern's Steakhouse once in your life. That's like one of those bucket list items, and you just, until you've been there, you don't know what you're missing. The steak there is world-class steak. So, boy, thank you, Maddie. Arizona. I got a lot of friends in Arizona. I'd love to take you to Mexican is best Mexican food. Yeah, my wife's not a big Mexican. I like Mexican food, but where in Arizona are you, Maddie? Uh, Next concert. So let's talk about that. FinPat's got a question. Next concert. I just bought, well, I have tickets to see Andy Summers in Ponte Vedra, which is awesome. Andy Summers is the guitar player for the Police, although he plays jazz pretty much now. Kind of. So that's coming up. Also have tickets to see Lou Gramm of Foreigner, who is now doing his solo. And I will tell you, it's in Daytona at the Peabody in January. Now, I'll say one thing, and that is that the reason I'm going to see Lou Gramm is because my buddy, Tony Franklin, is the bass player. Tony Franklin is like one of my bass heroes, and he is a really nice guy, a genuinely nice guy, and I'm hoping he's been playing with Lou Gramm, and I hope that he will be there and I can see him play, maybe even take him out to dinner in Daytona or show him around Daytona. That would be really cool, but no expectations. I'm just going to go there and see Tony Franklin play the bass with Lou Gramm. I want to know what love is. That's Foreigner, right? Lou Gramm. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, he didn't blame you. He blamed the restaurant. Well, he should blame me because I know what that restaurant's about. I didn't know he was just setting up a live stream. That was his deal. I'm just saying, come to dinner. I mean, it's a dining experience. It's a 4.5-hour dining experience. Although he was 15 minutes late, I was a half hour early. But you know that. I don't even need to tell you that, right? But he blamed. But it was a great night. It's a beautiful spot. If you're ever in Tampa, I really love Tampa. Tampa, St. Pete, to me in Florida, that's the place to be. I mean, if I was moving into Florida from elsewhere, I would move Tampa, St. Pete, maybe Sarasota, Fort Myers area. That is such a great area of the state. I also like Jacksonville, but Jacksonville's a little rougher. It's a little more South Georgia, but it's got an industrial kind of feel to it. It's still Florida, but it's more working people. It's not fake like Disney and party animals like Miami and packed with all sorts of crazy South Americanness, or complete relaxation of Key West laid back. I mean, Tampa, St. Pete, you got that big city. It's South Florida. Beautiful beaches. Treasure Island over there is great. There's things happen, and it's a big city, and yet you've also got this really laid back. I mean, that's part of South Florida from St. Pete, Tampa, and going down south. Really nice area if anybody wants to talk about Florida. And I've also got planned coming up. I've got some streams that I'm working on, and one of the things I want to do is have an interview with the lawyer to talk about personal injury law. Because that's something that gets a bad reputation, but he's a really charismatic guy, and I want to have him talk because this Morgan and Morgan is just so over the place and it's so ridiculous, that whole advertising campaign. So I want him to talk about the real world of what personal injury law is really about. So he's tentatively agreed. We just got to set it up. So hopefully I'll have the lawyer on here, and we'll have some discussion. And I have some other stuff. If you go into locals, I kind of plan stuff on locals. And I think it's free. I don't know. I think I set it up so you don't even need to pay. But if you want to kind of get updates of what's upcoming and what I'm planning and stuff, go check out my local stuff. Yeah, Jacksonville is a Navy town, Gigi. But it's also it's a shipping, it's a port, it's a working city. It's a really, they've got lots of transportation stuff there. CSX transportation is based there. Okay, so are we good? Everybody thumbs up. Thank you very much to FinPat, and thank you very much to Arkansas Lawyer and Upon the Horizons here. He's a good man. Let's pray for Upon the Horizon. He's facing some times, and he's a good man. Always like to see him here, and let's celebrate. All right, I'm going to dump you all over into expert. So when you get over there, say, Ghazni raid. All right. All right, and we're here for we'll see. I don't know what's happening. This was fun today. Thank you, mods. Thanks, people that aren't in the chat, but just watching. It's all good for you. All right, God bless you. Good night.